Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Guten Tag, comics fans. We are That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
Quentin could not join us this week as he is dealing with some family health things, so we wish him the best, and hopefully he'll be here next week. In the meantime, it's just us for tonight. Aaron is AWOL, so we will razz him without end until he shows up again. But for tonight, we're going to be talking about improvising in comics and how you do that on working on a comics team and the times where you'll need to do that, and maybe some best practices, or at least our experience with that. But in the meantime, before we get into that, we'll do as we always do and catch up with what we've been doing this last week. So, Jose, what have you been reading, watching, playing, doing?
I just finished watching, and I put it off for like ever, just because I don't like when people tell me what to do. But I just watched Witcher. I just binge watched The Witcher. I thought that was pretty interesting. I've never played the game ever, so I don't know how much it sticks to the game plot. But for going into it blind, I thought it was pretty good. Very interesting story concepts and whatnot that ran through it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I'm also a fan of. They put it down here. I'm a fan of the Witcher franchise as a whole. Yeah, but I like it. It's some people like complaints that it wasn't as faithful to either the games or the books. I like that it's its own unique thing,
Right.
because it gives people reason then to play the games, which are their own storyline, read the books, which are their own thing.
Well, it's only on PlayStation, right?
It's on every console and PC.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to find it.
Yes. If you do play through them, they can be a bit of a time suck, but if you just focus on the main storyline, you can get through them.
I say so is Ark.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing is that some people just jump on straight with Witcher 3, which I totally get because it is like the most well put together one, but trying to go backwards through them does not work because of how much they improve game to game. It feels really hard going back to Witcher 1 after playing Witcher 3.
It's the same way playing Assassin's Creed as well.
Oh yeah.
Because I started my son playing Assassin's Creed, I think with Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Okay.
And then as I got the next one, I would play it, I would beat it, and then he's allowed to play after I beat it because I can't let him beat it before me.
Naturally.
And then we worked our way all the way to Origins. He hasn't played Origins yet.
Okay.
And then I have Valhalla, but I haven't played it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to get it because I have the entire franchise.
Yeah.
And then he went back and went and played 3, and then he went back to play Brotherhood, like the trilogy or whatever for Brotherhood, and then went back to play 1. He's like, dude, it's real blocky, Dad, when you play in 1. I was like, yeah, it is.
Yeah. That's.
But yeah, I'm doing that, and I started reading Impossible Jones.
Okay.
It's only like 2 issues in, but it's hilarious.
Sure. Nice.
And that's from Scout Comics, and I'm catching up on my Silverline books.
Good. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not too familiar with Impossible Jones. What's that one about?
It's about this, like, there's these thieves, and they go to break into this hey Wubba, and break into this like laboratory, and one of them gets stuck there and goes through some kind of like machine gets turned on her,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden she can like stretch her body to be like whatever she wants it to be, and it's done very it's very like a almost like a reading Saturday morning cartoon in regards to like the style of art.
Okay.
But it's really appealing. Storyline so far, it's not terrible. I mean, it's interesting because she was a thief, and then she's like, oh yeah, I'm a superhero, and then like she robbed, she stops the criminal, and then she's like, oh, what are you gonna do? You gonna turn that back to the museum? It's like, no, I'm probably gonna hack it myself. just like the logic that they take into it. She's like, well, if I do good, then I'm gonna get something out of it. So
yeah.
Instead of just like, oh, I'm gonna do good because I have powers, it's like I'm gonna do good because I want something from it.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's hilarious.
But that's pretty much it. And then just family stuff we've been doing that just is time consuming, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but like I said, we took our family to Disney for this past week, and that is exhausting. Yeah. It doesn't matter what park you go to. You get back to your hotel room, you're like, I want to sleep.
Mm-hmm. There's like anytime you have an all day event, I feel like after a certain point, it just gets to a point where you're like, man, a bed sounds real nice right now.
Right.
I have been playing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Recently.
The video game or the card game?
Yes, the card game. They finally made Yu-Gi-Oh! A decent like digital arena version of it.
Okay.
Because they've had like Duel Links and other things where it's Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's not really Yu-Gi-Oh. It's not really like the actual card game. There's weird gimmick to it. But now like what Magic Arena had did, where they just made the card game digital. They finally did that with something called Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and it came out like last week.
Oh, that's cool.
It actually blew up. Like it's been insanely popular on Steam. Like just the amount of people logging into it. I think it has to do with like a lot of people who guys who grew up playing it, or guys and girls who grew up playing it like in school and stuff. And then as you're older, it might be less accessible to dedicate time to go to a hobby shop and play with other people.
Right.
Now you just need like an hour at the end of your day. So a lot of people got back into it.
Can you update your cards on that game? Like, you know what I mean? How you would do it in person?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You would update, trade, or however go about
Yeah.
getting your cards, selling your firstborn, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
pretty interesting. I know because I think
speaking of,
Magic Arena was able to do that, right?
Yes. Speaking of selling your firstborn, I started putting together a Dark Magician deck.
Nice.
Because a bunch of us 30-year-old dudes just like got back into it and like, wait, we should have a card shop not too far away.
Yeah, I didn't play it, but I watched the cartoon when it first came out.
Oh yeah,
and I was actually pretty interested because the whole Yu-Gi-Oh like thing and like whoever his alter persona was, it followed like Egyptian stuff, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yes, yeah. The lore behind it is really weird, but I like it. But it works like Magic Arena, where you will unlock in-game currency just by playing, which you can use to buy packs. Yeah. And then when you actually have cards, you can do the equivalent of trading, where you can break down so many cards that you're not using to get a resource, which you can then use to build cards you do need.
That's cool.
Yeah. So me and some friends on there, some of my friends have been stuck in Magic for so long they forgot how Yu-Gi-Oh plays. So I had like a little clinic yesterday where I was teaching people how to build decks.
Nice. Refresher decks.
yeah, that was good. But that's been a ton of fun. The other thing I've been playing a bit of is Hearts of Iron 4.
Hearts of Iron. I don't know what that is.
It's a World War II grand strategy game. So you're playing like not just as like, an army and a base on the field, but as the full government of whatever country. So you're going through policies and
that's interesting. Yeah,
restructuring government while also trying to command and manage your front lines. I started a game as nationalist China and managed to stall the Japanese invasion to the point where I counterattacked before the Allies got involved in the war. So by the time the U.S. joined, I'm pretty much poised to actually counter invade Japan.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it'll be funny. It's just fun playing with doing the alternate history that forms from playing that game, or doing multiplayer. Also is a lot of fun with that because you end up getting some really weird stories.
That's cool.
Yeah. Rating wise, I just read Magneto Testament, which is a really good book. I think it was an 8, but it's an origin story for Magneto, which done in a way where we don't see mutant powers at any point in the story. It's just his experience during the Holocaust, essentially.
Gotcha.
So it's him and his family fleeing Germany, living in Poland for a little bit, and then how he survived Auschwitz and then eventually escaped before he developed his mutant powers. So
right.
That's
cool.
It's very good. It's very well done. It's a pretty powerful book, actually. I definitely recommend it to anyone who's interested in.
So I need to find that book. My wife will definitely read it. She read Mouse.
Yeah.
And loved it. Several years ago. I mean, minus the whole whatever that school is that removed it from their library and whatnot. But my wife was heated when I read her the article about it, and she's just like, that's crap. I read that book, and that book was fantastic and amazing. And I'm like, it was. I didn't read it until she gave it to me. So it's so well done.
It's actually my copy is upstairs, but actually my copy of Mouse is signed by Art Spiegelman.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was my girlfriend was working with the Drunken Odyssey podcast at the time, and they're at the Orlando Book Fair, or the Florida State Book Fair, but down in Miami. And Art was there, so they got him on the show, and she's able to get him to sign both of her copies.
That's fantastic, dude. That would, man.
Yeah.
I would cherish that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, it's it is.
I don't even put my trade paperbacks on my bookshelf. I got some of them there, but not really. But that one, no matter what, always goes on the bookshelf. Every move we've ever done, that one has always made sure it's gone on the bookshelf.
It's on my personal bookshelf, and it's never leaving the house.
That's right.
Yeah. outside other reading horizon that just started dabbling on The Bronze Lie, which is a history book debunking some of the myths we got around sort of ancient warrior cultures, like Sparta, Athens, and some of Rome. Just kind of going through, like, really kind of looking at what was actually propaganda at the time that got brought to books and what was actually like the military record.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's very interesting seeing the delineation there. My favorite thing, which I talk about this thing every time I think about it, the fact that King Leonidas, everyone knows for his last stand at Thermopylae. The lesser known fact is that was his only major battle. He was kind of a pensioner at the time, and this is kind of his stunt where he's saying, like, I'm an older guy. I'm probably going to die without my Spartan honor, so I need to get something done about that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not at all how he's ever depicted.
Yes, he was not for our brother. I think he would have been about like 60 at the time or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's still very much on the idea of like a warrior king, though, that like even if you're older, you fight with your army, but it's still not quite 300.
Right.
Yeah. Also the fact that like they were not all shirtless dudes wearing just like plated skirts, so like they had full like bronze chest plates on and everything. Yeah. It's very interesting. But anytime you get like I've been on a history kick in general. It's a newer YouTube channel, just popped up, but History Hit. That's what I've been watching pretty much all week. They were originally behind a paywall service. And Tommy, we're talking about improvisation, but right now we're just doing our weekly catch up. But they're originally behind a paywall, and they just moved all their documentaries over to YouTube for free. And I've been watching a lot of stuff with one of their frequent hosts, Dr. Eleanor Janega. She's a medievalist, so she got her doctorate in medieval studies.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so she breaks down a lot of like the history and culture of the time. She did a documentary on the life and death in London during the medieval period. Like, what was your daily life like? How did the legal system work? What were your taxes like? How did prostitution work? And which church actually like sponsored the prostitutes of the area? And they also have another one, which is interesting, where they actually got 2 Japanese veterans and 2 American veterans who fought on Peleliu, and brought them together to go to the island and visit some of the sites. And they had a moment of reconciliation with each other. And I thought that was really cool.
Talked about their aspect of that, like their particular perspective. That's cool.
Yeah. And just seeing them actually like, saying like, it's like what happened there, like shouldn't have happened. And like, we should have been friends. And this seeing that the camaraderie that formed between that group, I thought was really cool.
That's neat.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's a very cool channel that I've been digging. Just
what was the channel called again?
History Hit.
History Hit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, I've been digging it. But that's what I've had this week. To I think first though, we did have a Kickstarter run for a little bit. We have finished its run, I believe. So we can pull up and see where we were on that one.
The Sniper and Rook and Rejects, right?
Yeah. There you go. Was it saved? I'm under a different account. That's why. Okay. Anytime you type in sniper into a search bar, I always get a little concerned. Yeah, we ended up funding that at it looks like 1,000 and some odd over our goal. So
that's
definitely
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you everyone who supported our Kickstarter for Rejects #1 and Sniper and Rook #1. We will get to work on packaging and shipping your copies here shortly. Make sure to check your emails for surveys. Those will be coming in. And it is very important to make sure we have the right address and that your name is credited properly. If not, Roland will probably bug you for some time in your emails. And I think that's all of our housekeeping at the moment. We don't have any Kickstarters for a little bit, but there will be probably some very vague World War II related tweets from me leading to the month of March for reasons that will become clear as we get closer. And now we will get into our subject material of the night, and that is improvising. Now, obviously, when you're working on a comic book, unless you are an artiste and do everything yourself, usually you're probably working on a team. And usually there's multiple people on that team. Sometimes you might have an indie project where it's just a writer and an artist and, a Kickstarter page. And I think a lot of really good comics come out of that process. But
a hope and a prayer.
Yeah, exactly. But now, if you're looking at something that's like our size or larger, Silverline or larger, up to Marvel and DC, you might be dealing with 4 or 5, sometimes 7 people on a single book. Just with different roles involved. And the process itself, the timeline makes sense. The writer writes the book, the editor approves the book, the penciler pencils the book, the inker inks the book, the colors the book, the letters the book, and then the editor hits it with a final stamp. Any revisions that you get done, and then it goes off to the printer, and then off to marketing and everyone else. But if you're used to any sort of creative process, timelines always get scuffed. And there's usually a lot of moments where you need to take a hard pivot at some point, either just within your own process or the process in general. So we might talk a little bit about both. Thankfully, actually, no, some of my projects have had to take very hard pivots. Usually the ones that I'm an editor on, thankfully not the ones that I'm a writer on.
Right.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of get into the moments when you do need to pivot, or moments when you're working on something and you realize this doesn't work, I need to change something, and how you improvise, maybe who you also talk to while you're improvising. And a lot of times, a lot of people that I've worked with here have been it's been interesting because a lot of people will, when they're doing something, they won't necessarily ask for forgiveness rather than permission, but they'll definitely make the change and then come back and be like,
was that cool?
Yeah. So they'll present you with both pages essentially. Where you're like, here's as written. Here's the change I'm thinking. Well, you put in too many hours in this already, so just do what you think works best. Usually the improvisation happens after the writing stage. I might talk about, as a writer, when you're different drafting, when you decide actually this thing I beat out is not actually a good beat, or there's no way I can write this into a panel. But I'll start with you as a so either in your own process, just when you're inking a page and then you realize wait, I need to change something, or you just do a small edit, or if something comes you have to make an egregious edit and okay, we need to pivot everything. What's kind of been your experience with improvising and maybe not going according to plan when you're working on a book?
I haven't had to do any real major changes. I know that there are times in regards to inking, there's one time for a fact that I had to redo a panel, right? And it wasn't even my choice to redo the panel. The penciler was like, oh, hey, here's all the panel and whatnot. Here's the page, start inking on it. And then as I'm inking it, and I'm already down to the last panel was it was the full width of the page. And it was just like an up close of a face. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, by the way, I changed that last panel. I got to send you the change of the last panel. I'm like, what do you mean? How bad did you change it? And he just brought it closer. He wanted more emphasis on the eyes, the emotion that the eyes were, or, what the eyes were emoting. And so it wasn't terrible, but I've had a piece for Silverline that I did that I had a penciler. I sent him the inks, and he was like, "Oh, hey, I'm going to change this a little bit because I don't like the way that looks and whatnot." I'm like, "I've already inked it." He's like, "Yeah, but how quickly would it be for you to change it?" I mean, I guess not that hard. I could change it, but depending on how far you're doing it. made a couple little tweaks here and there, so it wasn't terrible. All I had to do was like, for the most part, I had to just shift things around a little bit, shift my inks around digitally, and it worked out pretty good. But I've been the guy that, like, when someone's like, oh, hey, we need a inker to jump in quickly and ink this in, like, how fast can you do it? And I'm like, when do you need it? It's like, we need it, and we need it traditionally. I'm like, oh, it's gonna take me a little bit longer, but I mean, I can get it done. But like, I've had that for a friend of mine from Indiana that I had to help him out with.
Okay.
And I've watched as a friend of mine kind of ghost penciled for another penciler as he was trying to work on his book. It was just like he had to do other stuff. Like, he was trying to do as much of it as he could by himself, and he was just falling behind his own personal deadline. So he asked him to step in, which was really neat to watch somebody else do that.
Yeah.
But like, as for like major stuff, I haven't had to like cut a panel off yet.
Okay. But it sounds like more so you've been the guy that they go to when they make the pivot, not the person that gets pivoted on. Yeah.
Not that I'm fantastic, but you know, like,
yeah.
I'm pretty pliable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can swerve. But
looks like
digitally, it's easier to do it. You know.
Yeah. Kind of lost a little bit of a connection there. I'm not sure if it's you or if it's me, but you're kind of freezing up there.
Geek. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you're back, so I think we're good to go. So
okay.
Yeah, I'll run from here.
But yeah, like I said, digitally, it makes it. I mean, if I have to like throw out a panel and, you know, get sent another panel, it's a lot easier to do it digitally, because then you just lasso the whole thing, get rid of it, and add the new one in real quick.
Sure.
So I mean, it works out a lot easier. Not quite so easy to do traditionally.
Perfect.
But like, thankfully, the artist sent me the panel, and I was able to ink it separately, and then I just scanned them both in and pieced them together.
Okay.
So like, thank you, computers.
So in your own personal process, it may be a little different, you know, than maybe a penciler, because when a penciler has to improvise, they might just straight to the editor, like go back to the writer or the editor, say like, yeah, this thing you wrote physically does not work in space. But as an inker, I imagine that some of your like personal pivots are probably when you're drawing a line or you're doing an effect or something, then you realize, I hate how this looks, I'm going to redo all this.
I have done that.
Okay.
I hate doing it, because I worked on a book. I was doing digital inks on that one too, and I did not have the best computer doing it, running Photoshop or running Illustrator.
Sure.
And I would stay up to like, I'd start working at like when my kids went to bed at like 8 o'clock at night, you know, 7, 8 o'clock. And I'd go until like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be so tired. And I know the rule is always safe, but you know, when you're in a role, you really don't think about it. And I was sitting there working. I'm like, I got this whole page done. I got like nice details and all, like, just, it looks really nice. I'm so happy with it. And all of a sudden, crash. My computer goes blue screen. I'm like, no. I literally had to redo a page 5 times. Like the same page 5 times, because evidently I can't learn after the last one. But like, then I had to like improvise, like, because I needed to get it done. Like by that time, I was like, okay, I really got to like speed through it now. Like I didn't take my time on it. Like I was like, my lines were clean, my lines were good, and you know, steady, and you know, I didn't have any tangents. But by that point, I'm just like, I just want to get it done. It's like I had to rush through it. But I feel you can't tell.
Perfect. Okay.
So yeah, for the most part, I try my best to work it out, like without having to go back to it. There are times I've ran not thinking, and I'm sitting there inking, and then for some reason I started right to left as opposed to left to right, because I'm right-handed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you ink, if anybody doesn't already know, when you ink, you want to ink away from the direction that your arm works, right? So like, you want to work preferably left to right, or spin your paper around. You know what I mean? But always work left to right, so that you're not smearing your ink, which is, to me, is pretty obvious. But not thinking, I found a spot that I really liked. I wanted to ink that in first, and I kept going. And then I turned around, did something, talked to my kids, answered something, got a drink, and they came back. It was like, oh man, like smear a black line across. Gosh dang it, like, how am I going to fix this? It's like, thank you, Pro White. But But it doesn't look that good. I'm like, I mean, it's a good thing I'm scanning this in because I'm gonna scan it in. I'm gonna clean it up like digitally that way because you can definitely tell. Like anytime you put pro white on something, it doesn't matter. You're gonna see. You're gonna tell it's pro white until you go online and like or not online, but like digitally clean that up.
The white expunge tool just kind of dot that in. Yeah.
But yeah, that's really like for me. That's the only really thing that I do. Like if I have to like change stuff around or like if I messed up on my line weights, and I know my line came off weight. It's like, well, this line is about to become some Chris Pacello bold line now. Like I did that on purpose. That was the plan.
It's like it's the same rule that goes in jazz. If you hit a bad like note once, it's a mistake. If you hit it multiple times, it's a choice.
That's right. That logic makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that's kind of a blind spot for me because I don't deal with any of these in this space at least. But the next step after the inker would in most cases be the colorist.
Right, if it's getting colored.
If it's getting colored, yeah. So have you done much work on black and white comics, or has it been mostly the more contemporary colored ones?
Oh, I've done black and white comics.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually kind of I enjoy them. Like I think I like color better. You know what I mean? I mean, anybody really likes color better, I think.
Yeah.
But I love like my favorite like genre of story and comic book are noir stories. You know what I mean? Like even like I said, I think I said it before, like the old Cagney movies, you know, private detective stuff like that, like black and white. I love those stories. Like I could sit there and watch a movie about it. I could read a book about it. I could read a comic about it. It's so appealing to me because it's a plot. I mean, there are plot devices in those particular stories that like kind of crescendo up and then come down and crescendo up and just kind of keep building up and up, you know, until like the big reveal. And then you're like, I didn't know that. Like, holy cow. Like, and then especially when it's like, you know, not quite so funny, but like more dramatic version of like Clue, like the movie Clue. You know what I mean? Where like the plot connected this and this and this and this all together. You're like, oh, I did not realize the spider web went out that far.
Yeah. That's I love noir too. Obviously, my Wolf Hunter is very heavily noir inspired. I said it's like Murder on the Orient meets Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. But my favorite book is also I recommend this to everyone. Do I have it down here? I do. Without a doubt, this is my favorite book of all time. It's kind of a lesser known. I think this is like his only book, but it's Gun with Occasional Music. It is a gene punk noir murder mystery. So it's in a weird alternate future where animals are being like forcibly evolved to levels of sentience.
Interesting.
And the written word is outlawed, so all news and media is conveyed through music.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I wrote that down. I'm gonna look that up.
It is dark and hilarious and thrilling. There is a lot of. I'm going to reread this actually soon. The humor that is put into that book and just injected into the weirdest scenes is absolutely fantastic.
One of my favorites is Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. I think I had the other name, and 10 Little Indians.
Yeah.
And that was a murder story. Like that was fantastic.
Yeah, it's very good.
I remember zooming through that. Like my teacher gave it to me in high school. Like they were trying to clear out some of the old books that they had, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll take one, no problem." I just for Agatha Christie. I'm like, can't be that good. But I picked it up, dude, and I did not put it down.
Yeah. That's Shelley Christie, like honestly, like some like the like traditional like women writers who like really kind of got like the fiction like have really done like some of the pinnacles of what I think like fiction is. I've honestly who's that one that did it'll come back to me. Wow. Okay, I'll come back. Okay, but anyway, so working either in black and white in your next step is going to be the letterer, unless the writer might go back and letter it themselves. But in that step, making a pivot or improvising or coming back and rechanging something or improvising something might be a little weird. But have you ever gotten any moments where kind of from that step on you have to improvise something or get a note back from either the letterer or the colorist saying like what do we do with this choice here, or why is this way set up, or you said you haven't really had to make any like hard pivots yourself going forward, so you probably haven't had to like redo any entire panels, but have you had anything back where kind of like a slight change going from that point forward?
Well, I don't think I've had people bring it back to me, but I've had to do that with lettering that I've done.
Okay.
Where I've had to like, hey, I don't know if we can fix this panel or not, but if we can't, like, I'm going to have to cover this up and this up. I know that these are things like literally they're in the script. Like you made a point of pointing out. If you make a point of pointing out in the script, that means you want that to be seen. That's my logic when I read a script. And it's also my logic. Any scripts I've written is like, if I write it in there, then it's in there for a reason. And so like, sometimes you're like, hey, if I don't do this, I'm going to cover up the head. I was like, so I did lettering for a story for an anthology, and it was like Grant Morrison, or sorry, not Grant Morrison, but Neil Gaiman dialogue. You know what I mean? Like banter back and forth. I'm like, listen, you want me to put lettering to leather this big panel? I'm gonna have to like do it on the sides and like alternate between the cliff that they're sitting on. I'm like, that's the only way I'm gonna do it without covering up the amazing art that's on here. And they're like, well, let me see it when you're done. I was like, all right. And so I did it. It's like, adjust this and this. I'm like, okay. Like, it's easier to do it, I think, as a letterer, because usually, to me anyway, I save the files when like my word balloons and my tails are, before they're connected, before they're merged, right? I'll save the file so that if I have to, I can go through and adjust it and tweak it, move it how I need to. Otherwise, I got to make entirely new word balloons, which isn't hard. It's just time consuming.
Yeah.
But I've had a situation like that, and I try not to do that. I try to work it out myself.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there are certain the artist wants to draw the big fight scene in there, and it looks fantastic. Right. But like, you've left me this much room to like freaking put word balloons in. So like the dialogue that you have, I was like, you gotta like cut me a little slack.
Right.
Like, thankfully, I haven't been yelled at yet. So
good. Yeah, that is with the Christmas special of Wolf Hunter. That was the thing that I kind of worried about. When it went to. Thankfully, I'm a fan of the establishing shot. Yeah, like, we're gonna have a big visual piece. Maybe keep it like minimal balloons or minimal like blocks, but the captions. There was the moments were like in the Christmas special where we had limited space, so I'm like, all right, we're gonna just make this as dense as possible. And meanwhile, there's a shot with the photorealistic recreation of the interior of St. Martin's in the Fields.
Yeah,
and that's the entire panel. I was like, the letterer is going to not know what to do with any of this.
I mean, as an artist, I'm kind of surprised Quentin didn't go there and punch you in the eye.
Yeah. I was just expecting, like maybe we'll like vague out the lines, like it was like something like just get the major details. Like there's a pontiff, there's a chandelier, maybe a little bit of something in stained glass, and just like block out like there's these black rows of people in the pews, and Quinn's like, no, I'm just going to do this entire thing. Getting also the like accurate, like I think he referenced a photo of the exterior of the BBC after it was bombed, and that was like, so we have to cut to the BBC, what it looked like with the hole in the exterior of it. I thought that was wild. That
was cool. I've seen. I mean, obviously I have the book, but I saw the pages to those before they were finished, and just I can't even tell you how I don't want to say amazed because Quentin's an amazing artist, but like I was just looking, I was just like, whoa, you know what I mean?
Lol and DQCC, yeah, that was the man. that was the thing where, like, as a writer, I needed to pivot and like redo my captions on my dialogue to match that quality. I'm like, okay, I'm going to I'm just going to read a lot of Neil Gaiman's, a lot of like Poirot books, and just like trying to like get as much of that vibe going right now.
So, as a writer, how often do you, like, you write a story? You know what I mean? You get it written out, the script written out. You're like, oh man, this they're telling me what I wanted to tell. It's saying what I wanted to say, and then you get the art. How often you're like, oh, I might have to pull that back a little more. Like, how many times have you had? I mean, not numbers. Yeah. I don't need the numbers, but how often do you feel you have to like go back and revise just to make it fit with the art that you've seen? Because obviously you write it before the artwork comes along.
Yeah. That happened with that happened a little bit actually with Wolf Hunter, the Christmas special in particular. The first issue actually has been like that's chugged along without me for a while, which has been like, just speaks to like the quality of the team I've ever written on there. Now I'm providing a lot of feedback with my artist, the colorist Martin, and he gets exactly the same vibe. He's like, this is a French comic with a lot of Poirot. I'm like, yes. So it looks like a French comic, and I absolutely love it. But with all time winner, how much? Yes.
Right.
When you get the art back, and like, all right, we're going to pre-sales in a month. They're like, all right. The lettering is easier to change than art.
Right.
The major change actually where I had to pivot my writing back around the art was originally the church in the Christmas special was going to be St. Augustine's, because that was the largest Christmas mass in, I think this is 1940. 1941, St. Augustine had the biggest Christmas mass until it was destroyed.
Right.
But every major Catholic or Protestant church in England had a Christmas mass because they wanted to show the Germans that they weren't afraid, despite the fact that immediately afterwards they went back into their bunkers and did not go to their homes.
Right.
Yeah. That's kind of a weird, like, funny thing to think about. Like, you literally like inside of bunkers like 11 months out of the year. December hits, they start doing puppet shows in the squares again. The winter markets are open again, and they start doing the midnight mass on Christmas Eve. And it's like the very interesting thing.
Inspires hope, man.
It does, yeah. It's really kind of the and when you think about it, like essentially everyone at the time was in some way mobilized, because if you're a man, if you weren't serving, you're probably working in a factory.
Right.
If you're a woman, you were either working in a factory or taking care of, kids that weren't your own.
I say other people's kids, so they can go work in the factory.
Or you were, or you got the 1 week certification they offered at a time to become a nurse.
Right.
Yeah. So that was, everyone was doing something. But when you actually like, all right, we're taking a month to actually have like a proper holiday, that I feel like that actually did quite a bit for the morale of England at the time. So the problem is, no one, I can't, there's no precedent for it too. Like, there wasn't any official like statement from like the diocese or something saying you couldn't take a photograph of the inside of St. Augustine. There is no photograph of the inside of St. Augustine between the 1930s and 1940s.
That's interesting.
So we're like, okay, how do we reference this? I'm like, I told him, like, well, we can improvise if we want to. He's like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, other big church at the time. Like, okay, in this part of London, the other church that made sense to have Christmas Mass is St. Martin's on the Field. They had one. It was fairly reasonably sized, and is also very close to a bomb shelter. So those are the ones where, like, it's very much like, if they're going to have like the BBC broadcast, I believe what we pivoted BBC broadcast because the BBC broadcast was from St. Augustine's. We put in St. Martin's, but if anyone
creative liberties,
going back and referencing the like BBC broadcast of the midnight mass from 1940, they're already a very well paid World War II historian, and they can do whatever they want. No one else is going to catch that.
Right.
So we changed. That was like a major change. We're just going to change the entire location. Everything else is going to stay the same, but we're just changing the location. On the flip side of that, I had to provide the colorist a pivot because they had made that scene daylight. And I'm like, well, no, it's the midnight mass. This is about, I call it midnight mass, but it's like 10:30 at night. So it's still dark out though.
Right.
So that was the changeover right on that one.
Yeah, I've had that too.
Yeah.
Coloring a book, I drew them there was a desert scene of fighting. It's a Western. They were digging out this like big crystal, and I drew it. And I took out any line work that was in the background, and I threw in I rendered clouds in there. He's like, "That looks really good." I was like, "Oh, thank you," but it's nighttime. Oh, yeah. Like there's that big thing in the sky on this next page. It's the moon. I did not get that for some reason. Like I looked at the pages. I always look through the pages first. It did not click that was the moon for some reason. So I'm sitting there coloring it in. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, I could go in there, like change the saturation or whatever. Like I still had clouds and stuff like that, but I definitely changed it and flipped it to make it look like nighttime. I was like, ooh.
Hue shift blue.
You're right. Pretty much. Clean up the clouds a little bit. And it was good to go.
Yeah. The other big pivot I had to do as an editor, I always caught this probably actually the biggest pivot was like one, having a book that just switched writers entirely. Like they did the first issue and they had to leave. I'm like, all right, we got 3 more issues to go. It's like we signed off for that. We got the artist there for 3 more issues.
Wow.
So we're like, all right, I guess we're finding a new writer. we got the original writer's permission to like their go ahead, so they're cool with it. They like understood, but it's just like, all right. So the creative vision behind this has been changing drastically.
Right.
So
and sometimes you can see that in a book. You know what I mean? Like it may still have the same artist, but like you can. Probably not me. I don't think I can say very often that I've recognized that. You know what I mean? But like when you see that all of a sudden, like if you don't pay attention to like the writer, it tells you who the writers are. But if you don't pay attention, it's like, and you see the writer change right in the middle of a storyline, like you can tell. Like some of them you can really tell.
That's a thing too. Like with I think it also in comics it does come across more clearly than it would like in the TV show. Changing writers is actually pretty common from season to season.
Right.
But the choices the actors make, it's still the choices the actors make. But in a comic, you don't have actors making choices. It's just everyone playing off of each other. But the dialogue is where they are like it's all the writer pretty much.
Yeah.
The letter's gonna change the way that like impacts the page, but it's up to the writer to create the accents, the tone and voice, the frequency of which dialogue is used, what style of captions. The biggest thing is seeing like how they do interior thoughts. Are there interior thoughts thought bubbles or are they captions?
Right.
I'm a fan of thought captions. I know some people like doing thought bubbles still, but it feels very antiquated.
I think that's different, right? Like if it's captions and it's pretty much a narration, right? I mean,
yes, yeah, true. But here are some things where it got popularized by Marvel, but DC started doing it in an Image where if someone is having a thought, you'll have a caption with like their face on it, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Marvel. Yeah. I noticed that Marvel did that. So actually, you're right. DC did that too because they did it for I think I remember Batman, Batman, Superman, Batman, Public Enemy.
Yeah.
They did it. You know what I mean? They would have like when they were talking, and there was like the dialogue back and forth where Batman was like, first he was like kind of singing Superman's praises, and he was like saying he knows better, Batman, and all of a sudden Superman's saying almost the exact same thing, but from him it's coming off as positive about Batman. It was interesting, but it's kind of like that. Like I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
it's definitely interesting, but you'll notice those changes, like the writer has changed.
Right. Yeah, one of the times I noticed it, like I don't usually, like I said, I don't usually notice that in TV shows much, but one of the times I clearly noticed it was the show Heroes when
Oh yeah,
all of a sudden, like halfway through one of the seasons, that was the writer strike happened, and you can tell, like,
yeah.
but I was like, wait,
What
just happened?
All right. Yeah. Oh, this is no longer union.
Right?
Yeah.
Like after that, I was like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna pay attention now to like what people say or how things, storylines and plots go along,
Yeah.
because like that was a big enough change that like I don't normally notice things like that, because normally I'm like, entertain me. I want to be not like like I'm a pharaoh or anything, but like
Yeah.
I go to the movies regardless of it was based on a comic or not. I go to the movies to be entertained. You know what I mean? That's what I'm paying for. It's not just the popcorn. And so I don't care how bad a movie is. Like there are people like, I mean, Justice League was pretty bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's just put it out there. If anybody loves Justice League movie, the one in the theater, I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding. It was, but I was entertained with it. Like it was it was kind of bad, but I was entertained. I sat there, I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like I would not have done that way, but I'm entertained. That's all that matters.
Yeah. That's what was the last really dumb action movie I thought. Oh, I was went to go see The Meg, the movie with Jason Statham.
The shark?
Yeah, the shark. That was a movie we were watching like, this is incredibly stupid. I love it.
There are movies that are like that like there are movies my wife likes that I don't like. Like one of the ones she loves to watch is Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh yeah.
I can't for the life of me watch that movie.
Yeah.
I've watched it. I've watched it a few times. I still moments in there that I laugh. I love Uncle Rico. He's my favorite.
Oh yeah.
Just because he's the biggest jerk there. He's my favorite. But I can't sit there and watch it like she does.
Yeah. Growing up with a bunch of weird people in like a more rural part of Oregon, like watching that movie, you're like, oh, this is like, I relate to this too much.
That's too close to home. We can't do that.
I do love it still, but it is those things where like watching Portlandia and to some extent Letterkenny. I was like, no, I understand all of these.
I keep being told I need to watch Letterkenny.
It's really funny. It's a good time. Yeah.
That's what I'm told. I don't know if I can bring myself to watch it. It's just, I don't know. It's something new. Like right now, I can't watch anything new. I have colors that I did for the anthology with Peter.
Yeah.
You know, I got inks to do for obsoletes. And if I sit there and watch something new, I can't really work.
Yeah.
I don't know how Aaron plays video games.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's just amazing to me.
Yeah.
Like, wait, you sit there and play video games?
I know he does. Like he says he does it like on during load screens and like.
Right.
And our current game, like
scenes.
current game is Halo, and like I'm in and out of matches so quick. That game is like matchmaking is on it, so like I can't like I have no time for work during that.
Right.
But yeah, for me, watching anything new, I get the I'll get influenced by the voice by that, and then I'll immediately want to do something. Taking inspiration from that, I'll immediately have ideas of like, how could I make this my own?
Right.
So like, if I'm working on Wolfhunter, pretty much all I did is watch World War II and like spy movies and
I get
mysteries. That. But like my current thing, which I'm currently waiting on notes back on to get back to my artist. It was nothing but like Roman mythology and space epics, which is it's a concept. Yeah. Yeah. I guess the bringing it back. Other thing I want to talk about. The main thing I do to pivot as a writer, though, I guess kind of same thing is changing dialogue from either because I'll notice I'm starting to take too much of one tone or another, or I'll finally understand the voice by like the back third of the book. I'm like, all right, now I need to redo all the front.
I totally get that.
Yeah. Really. But the biggest pivot is always going to be from. I always do. I'm a big pre-writer because I understand like that's just the way. I like having the roadmap I know that I'm going to change it, but at least I have something there, so I can just, if I'm having like a weird day where like I can't really like, if I'm not writing well, the words aren't wording correctly, I can just kind of, regurgitate things I've read in the dictionary until I get to the next point and call it.
Right.
So I will do essentially I do it like Kevin Hearn did a great breakdown of like how he writes a novel. So I borrow from that, but also it's the same way that you would write a TV show, essentially, where you do your beat chart, which is going to be, for me, I break it down for a beat every 3 pages or so. If I'm working a novel, it's going to be like every 2,000 words. And then I'll essentially treat those like chapters. And then I'll do a next stage, which is, okay, breaking those down further into page by page. What do those look like? And then from there, I'll start scripting. So essentially, I do a Marvel script in my pre-writing.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you break it down? Do you do it? Because I know some people. Well, my daughter. I say my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She breaks it down backwards. Right? She knows where she wants to end for the chapter. She basically knows where the chapter starts. You know what I mean? Especially when she's going from one chapter to the other. Obviously, she already knows what the start is.
Yeah.
But I want this chapter to have this cliffhanger here,
Mm-hmm.
and then she breaks it down backwards.
Yes, I'll do that sometimes. I break from the point of highest impact. So, with Wolf Hunter, I wanted to have, I wanted it to be a slow cook. I want to be like a dry rub sizzle.
Right.
So the high impact is actually going to be at the very end, at the very beginning. The middle is going to kind of, which is also why a lot of people don't like it more, but I love it because I want to have this saying like that, the slow violin playing in the background. So I knew like, okay, it's going to start with a bang here. So from there, and then I know, I'm going to kind of, how does that bang eke out and affect other things around it going forward?
It's the Godfather build up.
Yeah. Or if I know, okay, this person's going to do there, and we're going to think that they're the killer, or we're going to have an attack here. How do we throw shade on them, or how do we throw shade somewhere else, and just kind of trickle that backwards, putting that throughout that point. So issue 2, I essentially wrote almost all backwards, because I knew how that was going to end, essentially, before I knew what the middle is. And then issue 2 was also another pivot because we had to redo the entire front third, because it didn't have the right bang. And so Roland gave me a note, and we essentially turned it into what I called the Tom Cruise moment, which Dean Zachary did. It's already kind of been spoiled a little bit because Dean Zachary did the alternate cover that will be available through the Kickstarter when issue 2 launches, which we might be launching issue 1 soon here, where it turns into a fight scene on top of a train.
Nice.
With using prop weapons. And so that was that thing I wrote, like that scene is the one I wrote like a day before I turned it in and started working on issue 3. It was like nice. the first that's like the start was the last thing that got touched on issue 2. But issue 1 has a very intense bang. I think we actually have some sample pages for that I might be able to show at the end of the show. And so from issue 1, I wrote forward, issue 2, I wrote backwards, and then issue 3, the bang is actually in the middle. So that one I kind of did a little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I know I did when I first decided to do comics and do my own thing, I wrote my own superhero comic, and I started that one with key points backwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know I wanted to have like that heroic pose at the end, like so he's standing on a rooftop and whatnot. But how did he get there? And I went back to like, I went back to like telling his origin real quick, like just a real quick snippet of his origin, and then back to the beginning. How did he have to explain his origin? He was explaining it to a therapist. You know, while he's stuck. He basically got Baker acted. So like
Okay.
while he's stuck in this like mental facility, being questioned whether or not he's insane or whatever.
Mhm.
He got there because he's a high school kid, and the jocks beat him up. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
then at that point, he decided to manifest his electric powers and just started taking people out. But yeah, like I worked that one backwards, and then I scripted it forward. You know what I mean? After I
Yeah.
knew the key points that I wanted
Yes.
and how I led back to it. But like even that, like I had to improvise stuff for that one too,
Mhm.
because when I wrote it out, I wrote it like after I went back and like laid everything out, I scripted it, and then after I scripted it, I paneled it like on the side of the paper. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
how did I want
yeah.
this panel to look? And then I was like, okay, that's not right. That doesn't look right. That doesn't flow into like the next
Mhm.
page the way it should. It's kind of like a leap. So I had to like change the script to be able to fit a
Yeah.
better panel layout. You know what I mean? In regards to like between pages. And then when I first did it, I didn't even consider page breaks. So like page one is going to be its individual page, right? And you don't want the story to flow from page one to page two, where you want it to be like, oh, now I want to turn the page, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to moving through one and two. You want it to move through two and three, and then like make them want to
Yeah.
flip to the next page. Like I didn't realize that when I first did it, so then I had to go back and fix that. Like I think I ended up redoing the script like 4 times.
Nice.
But first time writing a script for myself, so
Yeah. The first the first things I wrote and published were flash fiction, so those things were easy because it's literally just like 1,000 words, and if there's only so much room you need to change when you're wiggling on those. But I remember going straight from that into writing my first novel length project, and the amount of like getting like, all right, 30,000 words in, I hate all this. I know I'm going to do the pivot going forward and then change front, finish the 50,000 words, and like, all right, we started a novel, go another like 20,000 words, finish it. All right, so this is going into the in progress folder. I'm going to rewrite it all from scratch because now I know what the story is. And then after that, I was like, oh, I need to be much more intense with my outlining. Yeah. But it's the and with writing something like that, if you're pivoting a comic at some point, like you can get to a point where like, okay, I'm going to commit to the panel structure. The artist can just work on that, and then I'm going to change the dialogue as needed. But if you're writing a novel, it's all on you.
right.
Yeah, it's like, all right, well, we need to change all the words.
That's something I can't see myself doing, just because like I don't know, it seems huge. Like seems so much bigger than I am to like write a novel. But my daughter sat there and she was writing short stories like in junior high.
Nice.
You know what I mean? And she loves it. And that's what she does. She's like, oh Dad, I wrote these many words. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, what are you telling me? It's like, well, I went to work and I got out of work, and I went to the computer and I wrote this many words for the day. Is that a lot? Like, I know finishing a whole page is a lot for me.
Yeah.
Like that's in one day, I mean, I think that's how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to ideally finish a page a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It takes me longer than that. But like, if I actually like finish a page a day, I'm like, yes, right on.
Yeah.
Then you stand outside in your yard, and neighbors go by and they're like, "What are you doing?" I finished the page.
Right.
But yeah, like then I realized after she was doing it that one of my friends, Nick, was posting online. Like he'll do like a month, like a tally for the month or something like that. Like I wrote these many words this month, which is this many words more than the month before. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So like I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that like you keep tally of the words that you count. Like you were mentioning it earlier, and I was like, oh, that's not just my weird friends. That's everybody.
Yeah. That's it's some people are motivated by our hard word count, like a metric. I'm hit or miss on it. I use it more so to gauge the structure of the story.
Okay.
But
that makes sense.
With noveling, it's they did the breakdown because with comics, you have yeah, it's like newsprint, 22 pages. This is your metric.
Right.
When then the amount of panels can get like wishy-washy in there depending on what you're doing. If you're doing something a bit more artsy or a bit more like different, you might do like, you know, a page, or if you're doing like a hero comic, you're looking more 3 to 5.
Right.
But when you're writing like just prose, it's pretty much all word count. So your word count is going to be because you can get printed in so many different formats. So if you're like a like double bound hardback, you're going to have a lot more words on a page than if you're a like pocket size mass paperback. So the best metric to keep track of it is just word count, and on average 50,000 words is the typical novel length.
Okay, like the complete full novel.
Yeah. So some places, some go over that. You end up seeing now like a lot of like mainstay novels are about 100,000 words, which is double length. But for the most part, a lot of things fall between 50,000 and 100,000 words.
How many words are in Dune?
Oh god,
that's a big book.
That's a big book. Let's see. And also publishers do track them. So for a lot of cases, you can't actually get the word count from the publisher. Dune's word count is 181,493.
Holy cow!
So it's like quadruple or triple to quadruple. Yeah.
Holy cow!
But on the other word, I think
I can't believe I read that.
Yeah, no. Dune Messiah word count. Dune Messiah 72,449. Yeah, so because the rest of the Dune series is much shorter.
I was gonna say, isn't that smaller?
Yeah,
a smaller book.
Yeah, a lot of, like the rest of the Dune series is much more in that typical like size, but Dune is Dune's also a weird case because Dune, speaking of pivots, was originally written for a periodical. No one wanted to publish the book when he was pitching it, but some science fiction magazine said they wanted to buy it as a periodical.
Interesting.
So he wrote chapter as like the monthly issue of Dune.
Yeah.
And so for a while he was just trying to keep his contract going. And then by the time they essentially said like, okay, we've got a publisher lined up that's going to do it the rest of this as a published novel. He's like, all right, I'll start working on the rest of the novel now.
Right.
So he ended up probably spending the same time like doing 100,000 words after that as the actual novel, and just threw the 80,000 that's already written in the front.
I didn't even know that. That's interesting. That's cool. Like I remember reading periodicals.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I think the first periodicals I read were I was bored at my aunt's house and I was reading Reader's Digest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that had some interesting stories. Mostly, like I feel that mostly they were aimed towards like women, but
yeah, and you got the occasional ones that are men's size. Like, one of the best selling periodicals is actually in the comics industry with Heavy Metal.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know how common this is, but for me, like like my first introduction to the comics proper was X-Men and X-Force. My first introduction to comics altogether as a medium was Prince Valiant.
Like the comic strip?
Yeah.
In comic book form or on the comic strip?
Like in the comic strip, like the first time just seeing like sequential art. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this is neat. I like this.
Right.
And so then with your like become a 5-year-old with a subscription to the newspaper because I wanted to read my comics.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love the newspaper comics. Those are fantastic. They had Alley-Oop. Wasn't my first comic I ever like read. My first comic was Conan. Like the old magazine format Marvel Conans. My dad had them. He had like a stack of them like hiding under his bed, and I don't even know what brought me in there, but like I went in there to go grab something. I was like, what is that? And I don't even know. A few hours later my dad comes looking for me and I'm in his bedroom reading on the floor, laying down on the floor with a pillow reading. I couldn't even really read much of it, you know what I mean? Because a lot of it didn't make sense to me, but the artwork, I remember the artwork. I think the dude that did the artwork, I think his name was like Rudy something. I can't remember what his name is. I met him. I met him at PitCon one year, and he was super cool.
That's awesome. Speaking of names, I do remember the speaking of the women writers earlier. Like one of the biggest influences on like some of my like dialogue choices is actually Jane Austen. Like, I'm a huge
I can
Jane
see
Austen.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always like kind of a weird thing to think about, like just the weirdest influences.
I think that like I never actually read a Jane Austen, but my wife loves any movie that had to do with Jane Austen stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like all the Pride and Prejudice and stuff
Mhm.
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only one I can think on top of my head. There's a couple of them, Pride and Prejudice, and dang it, now I'm gonna forget. But like there were several of them,
Yeah.
and we would watch them. Like we watched
Yeah.
together, and I was like, I don't understand this, and she's like, this is pretty much how it's written in the book. I'm like, there's a book?
Yeah.
What the heck? Who is this
Yeah.
person?
And yeah, Jane Austen is such also interesting character. Just, I mean, like being a social critique of England in the 1700s, but then also like a lot of her motivation was just sheer spite, where like everyone's not like, you need to get married. It's like, well, men are dumb, so I'm going to write better than any of them can speak or read.
Right. It's very wordy.
Yeah.
Like straight up, very, very wordy.
Yeah.
And that takes some getting used to. Because I'm like, wait a minute, you just said the same thing like 3 times. I don't understand that.
Yes.
But like, I mean, I don't know about the period, but like the idea, if you go by Jane Austen's writings, the idea that everyone was so eloquent in the way they talked, what happened?
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not very eloquent at all, but like, man, we were awesome.
Yeah. Well, first we guillotined the nobility because we realized that they were taxing us a lot more than they really needed to, and then everyone else died in World War One.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's amazing. But also, like, I'm sure like etymology is going to look back at this period like 1,000 years from now, and we were like, man, they had such trains where like the theys and thous are going to be like the yeets and the wokes, and we're like, man, they spoke so.
Which, interestingly enough, yeet is an old word. Like, I can't even be mad at that one. Like, people were like, oh, blah blah blah, yeet, and I was like, okay, that is the dumbest thing you ever said. And then I looked it up. I'm like, crap.
I'd say like compared to contemporarily, the second highest like year with like recorded use of yeet in writing happens like the same time like the Siege of Vienna,
right,
or something like that.
It's like, man,
like the Ottomans were talking about it. Yeah.
The other one that got me was on fleek. Right, everyone was like, "Oh, my eyebrows are on fleek," and I'm like, "That is the dumbest thing." Like, what does that mean? I looked it up. Like, crap, it was used in freaking colonial times.
Yep.
Like for the same thing.
Yep.
I can't even be mad at you anymore about for it. Like I have to accept it. Like as long as it's like if it's new words that we've created for like just no apparent reason, and I'm just like, I know we do that. I know society as a whole does that.
I mean, that's how words got started in the first place. It's just someone's like, I'm going to call this.
Come up with some dumb things, but like if it's had already been created like in the past, in our past, in our cultural past, then I can respect that. I don't know what it is about me, but like I can respect that. I was like, I won't use it, but I can respect it. And if you're using it in the right terminology, like sus, I don't like the word sus, right? Like suspect, suspicious, just use the whole word. It's beautiful. But if you use it the right way, I can't get mad. And so people will say, "I was like, oh, blah, blah, blah." Like it's like, oh, that's sus. I'm like, that's not right. Like if you're gonna use it properly. Well, how do you use it properly? Look it up. I did.
Right.
But yeah, like if they use it properly, I can't be mad.
You
know what I mean? Like at all. Like that's a idiosyncrasy of my own as well. Like I can't be mad about that.
Well, it's also really interesting to think about. This is like a Shakespearean thing, but the phrase "no cap," as in you're calling, like saying, like, "No, this is true," or when you're calling someone out online saying, like, "Oh, it's cap," same thing as Shakespearean "doff thy cap, sir." It's like, no, you're dumb. Put your hat on and leave.
Yeah, like there's some good ones. It's just I wish people knew why they said it. You know what I mean? Why like use it? Oh, they heard somebody famous use it, so now they want to say it. Like figure it out yourself. Do the research. I think that boils down to everything. even like, you know, not to bring it back, or actually to bring it back around, you know, when you're doing, you know what I mean? I don't think that you can improvise something if you haven't done your research on the thing that you're improvising. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can easily say, oh, I'm going to change this. But if you've not researched the dialogue or even your format, your layout when it comes to writing and art, to know how to do it properly.
Yeah.
Like, you should not do that.
Yeah, like from a writing perspective, also, to know which church to pivot to,
Right.
It's researching like, okay, which Protestant church had a midnight mass in London in 1940. The amount of like weird that, but what resulted in me getting a really weird Google history. So we talked about this on Wednesday Wham a while ago, but in writing you have the concept of the buy-in, where if you can do a throwaway line to explain why something has to be the way that it is, and if you use it sparingly, then the audience will usually buy into your premise.
Right.
So Wolf Hunter, it's set in one train during wartime, looking for some stolen goods. Why didn't they just forcibly search all the carriage? In 1939, the official Secrecy Act was passed by the London Chamber, which said that people, and this is their version of like the Third Amendment, where search and seizure. No, it's a
Seizure,
yeah. Where we're saying like, yeah, without rightful reason, individuals' belongings cannot be searched by a member of the government unless it is related to official business related to the state, and that also included provisions to then give the government more ability to actually like hunt down on spies. So when they found someone, they gave them more rights to go into like their personal space. They gave them more tools to like actually like research an individual if they suspected them of being a spy. But for the average person, it gave them protections because you knew that just going between London and Liverpool, your stuff wasn't going to get searched.
Right.
And so, like, well, they can't do that because they're going to be breaking the Official Secrecy Act, which is a very new law. So for having someone who has been in the laboratory the entire time to not know about it, makes sense that then someone who works in logistics would need to explain that law to them.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, this is perfect because it explains why they can't do this thing. It's new, so I have reason to put it in. But the amount of research to figure out how to put this one line in there that I realized needed to happen. As I'm sitting there in the official British government's like public records search, going back on laws from the 1930s.
Jeez.
Like, no normal person is going to like see this document ever, and I'm
but you'll get that. You'll be that person. He's that one person.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you know what? That wouldn't have happened because of blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Hey, you're right. Like, no prize award goes to you. Good job. But yeah, like, I get that. Like, I've had people like for my superhero book that I did. They like, well, that's not how you called him friction, but that's not friction. That's like channeling electricity. I was like, I know it's I know that.
Yeah.
When you cause friction and whatnot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It has no electricity, really no electricity like properties whatsoever. But I like the name. Like, I don't need to explain it. I like the name.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Like, maybe the name of the book isn't because of the powers he has. How do you know it's not the things that are trying to stop him from reaching his goal? What?
Right. There you go.
Man.
Perfect.
Like, was that it? No, that wasn't it at all.
Don't know. Perfect. All right. So this is so we're about closing in on the end of the show. So I did have some ideas to work on the theme of improvisation. And for those of you familiar with my background, know that I have a history in community theater, both as an actor and as a writer. And I have worked in improv as well. So I have a bunch of weird resources, speaking of weird research, saved up on improv games.
That is weird.
Yeah.
So my only stint into any kind of improv is that I used to do live action role playing.
Yes.
right?
Perfect. Yeah.
I did vampires. So like you had to improvise your character and your own personal dialogues and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And you know, it's role playing of any kind, I feel like, is a great way of getting into storytelling in general, because it's, especially when you're working something in comics where it is a collaborative field where there's a lot of back and forth. You know, you're already in there, or you're working with your other members of your cohort and your game master, just bouncing things back and forth.
right.
Yeah. So the first game I have is I have a couple games set up for just two people. If I had another one that if we had Aaron or Quentin here that work well, the are good for just two people. We've used them on stage for some really funny moments. The first one is Fortunately, Unfortunately.
Okay.
So the way this game works is one of us will present a statement that would lead up to a story. So I might say that John drove to the pharmacy. The next person would say, fortunately, traffic was clear that day. The next person, and they'll say a phrase or a sentence that falls onto that. The next person then says, unfortunately, his air conditioner was not working. and so you just bounce back and forth, presenting a fortunate statement to better his story and an unfortunate statement to make his story worse, or whatever you're doing, until you come to a conclusion of the story.
Okay.
Yeah. There was one where me and I think it was Crystal was my other in this when we were doing this, ended up doing a story that eventually resulted in a magical unicorn in a land of dreams with a crippling heroin addiction finding a adoptive family right as our best friend OD'd.
Wow.
So like it's a narrative, but
Right.
you just kind of it takes you to some weird unexpected places because you're agreeing with something that someone's presenting with them, but you're figuring out how to work stakes one way or the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have to alternate back and forth? It has to be fortunate and then unfortunate and then fortunate. And then
yes.
Unfortunate. Wow.
Yeah. So we'll see how these go. We're just going to do a little bit of improv games to end the night here, just because they're usually always fun, and it kind of gets your mind thinking about ways you can pivot when you need to, or change things up.
Right. Rolling. Don't judge us.
All right. So do you want to start or should I?
Oh, no. You start.
Okay.
Wait,
right.
do I go fortunate first? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
So then I just present a phrase, then you go fortunately, and then I go unfortunately.
Okay.
All right. Let's see there. I don't know if anyone is in chat to feed us anything. It looks like we're kind of quiet tonight. So we are going to then borrow. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to use kind of something kind of vague. Gerard was leaving the village.
Okay. Gerard was leaving the village. Fortunately, his neighbor gave him a pig.
Unfortunately, it was raining that day, and he had to track the pig through mud.
Fortunately, he had an umbrella to cover himself.
Unfortunately, he had a hole in his shoe.
Okay. Fortunately, the rain did not last very long.
Unfortunately, he still had several miles to go.
Fortunately, he knew the direction to go.
Unfortunately, there were bandits on the road.
Fortunately, his pig was trained well to attack.
Unfortunately, the bandits, and this is kind of where it gets into like the kind of the tricky part, because you don't want to just like with improv, it's always yes and, so you don't want to just like curtail someone's thing. You try to work. So unfortunately, him and the pig were still outnumbered.
Fortunately, that's a tough one, huh? Okay. Fortunately, someone came to help.
Perfect. Yeah. Unfortunately, they tripped as they entered into the fight.
Fortunately, the fall did not break his bow.
Okay. Unfortunately, the bandits were able to get behind Gerard. Fortunately, Gerard knew how to ride his pig. Unfortunately, the bandits took the stranger hostage.
Fortunately, Gerard did not know him.
So then at that point, we might just say, because the point is to get to a resolution of the conflict. So I might just say that and Gerard was able to ride his pig down the road to the other town.
I didn't say he was valiant.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, that's how that game works. You just go back and forth until eventually the unfortunately person just says, and the story concludes. So yeah,
That was funny.
Just create the story of Gerard, the a villager who was gifted a pig, and
Right, Gerard, his mighty pig.
had one of the worst walks until he eventually abandoned someone and rode his pig off into the sunset.
He's like, thank you. That needs to be in a story somewhere.
Yes.
Gerard and his mighty pig. Yeah, I wasn't even sure where to go with that one. Like that, I was like, wait a minute, pigs can get pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can ride the pig.
Yes, exactly.
Like I've seen that happen with kids.
No, he also didn't establish how big Gerard is. He might have been a shorter man.
That's true.
Yeah.
And Gerard is like dancing. I can't even say that. I think Danzig's still like 6 foot or something. But what's the name? There's there's this dude in Harley Quinn where she broke off from, you know what I mean, from Joker and whatnot, was doing her own something. And one of the guys, I think it was like the owner of the building she lived in, the museum she lived in, was this really short person.
Oh, yeah.
And I apologize if that's not the right term, but he looked like Glenn Danzig. Like his hair get long, straight hair, and whatnot.
That's fantastic.
So that's what I meant when I was like, oh, it could be dancing, but like that's what I meant because that dude reminds me of dancing.
That's hilarious. All that. Okay, so do one more game to end the night, and this one is one of my favorites, and also this is something that if you ever watched a bit of Fry and Laurie, which was an old British sketch show with Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry, which I think is some of the best television they've ever remade.
Hugh Laurie did a sketch comedy thing?
He did a sketch. Yeah, he was originally a comedian, and he did a sketch comedy show with Stephen Fry, and it is most of it's on YouTube now, but it is so good.
That is interesting.
Yeah. We don't explore on the show often, but I'm going to have to quote the name of an episode here. But they have a sketch called "Bitch Mother Please," which is about just using this concept a little bit, but it is a barber who speaks far too eloquently, like Jane Austen on steroids.
Oh my gosh!
And it just Hugh Laurie is a normal person trying to get a haircut from Stephen Fry, who is just going on and on, waxing poetical.
That's fantastic.
So this game is called Questions Only. So the way this game works is kind of like the same thing where we're setting a scene, but it's a scene that we're the characters in. And we have to yes and it, but we have to speak in questions only. So it's not so much as like there might be a conflict trying to resolve as much as there is a concept we're trying to conclude, where we might be trying to figure something out, and it sounds like a British detective thing where everything's gonna like, well, what about this? And how does this work? Well, I think this might work. What do you think? And then we just pass these back and forth, speaking in questions only.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, let's see there. There isn't anything out there, and and then there's the rules if you want to do this with multiple people and kind of do it a bit more like have someone coming from off. Because I worked in improv theater, there are rules for like if you're doing this as like an improv show, like how you would bring someone onto the stage to play something. Yeah, but just as like the game itself, it's just back and forth until we feel like you run into a dead end or have resolved the concept.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Phil Leon, you're in for our last half hour here. We've talked about quite a bit in the front half and talked about improvising in comics, how you might pivot things, and now we're finishing up with some improvisational comedy games, pulling on some experience in role playing and my work in improv theater. Actually, if Phil, if you're still in chat, if you have a concept or a problem that needs to be solved, if you could feed us the subject for this game of questions only, where Jose and I can speak in only questions.
In only questions.
Yes. See if Phil has an idea, or if we have scared him away.
It's like, oh, improv? Whoa. These guys.
Let's see there. Okay. Don't know. Okay.
Fair.
All right. Okay, let's see what that's an interesting photo. Okay, let's try to get something fed in here. Okay, here we go. All right. So we are in a living room together. And as we are going to change the channel, we can't find the remote.
Okay.
So if you want to, I'll let you, if you want to start with this one, I'll let you, since I started the last one.
Okay. Where did you put the remote?
Could you explain what you're talking about?
You know, that thing that clicks the TV. Where did you put it?
Well, I didn't touch it. Where's the last place you saw it?
It was on the table, but do you see it there now?
Didn't I tell you to move your books off the table a week ago?
My books are not the issue. They will remain there as long as they need to be, if that's all right with you. I don't think that was a question. Is that all right with you?
There you go. You know what? That's fine. They can sit there for now. But did you check under the couch cushions?
Why would they be under the couch cushions?
Well, don't you have that thing where if you stand up, sometimes your things might fall around or fall off your pocket into the couch?
Do you think I have holes in my pocket?
Well, I don't know. Do you wear basketball shorts often? They have big pockets.
Are you going to get up off your cushion?
Well, I suppose I could, but are you right if I might knock one of your books with my knees? I got clicky knees.
Well, if you knock it over, you're going to pick it up, right?
Well, if I pick it up, then I guess you have to deal with me putting it back somewhere else. But you're not going to throw a fit, right?
I don't know. Are you going to find the remote?
Man,
This is like having a conversation with my kids.
I haven't done this in a while, so yeah, it is definitely something you're like, man, this is if people actually talk like this, it'd be annoying.
I'm gonna get my kids to talk like this.
Yeah. Yes, I'll help you find the remote. But are you going to make me watch another one of your weird movies?
Of course, I'm going to make you watch one of my weird movies. You love them, right?
Love is a strong word. But there's no chance I could maybe persuade you to flip the channel to something else.
There's nothing else on TV. What would you want to watch?
Well, I don't know, but I think I think Spike is showing Die Hard again. Would that work?
Does it look like Christmas outside?
Just because it's a Christmas movie doesn't mean you can only watch it on Christmas. Do you stop watching other movies when it comes to Christmas and only watch Christmas movies?
Don't you?
No, I watch other things. Wouldn't it feel weird if it was only if we limited to only one thing at a time, one theme?
Are you saying that you watch Young Frankenstein when it's not Halloween?
I'm saying I watch Young Frankenstein, nearly every chance I get.
Are you even American?
Yes, and that movie's a national treasure. Why would you not watch it?
Because I don't want to oversaturate myself with it so that I enjoy it the next time I watch it. Why would you watch it every day? Wouldn't you get bored?
I'm not saying I watch it every day, but don't you think that like once every other month is like sufficient? Or is that too much for you?
No, I guess that would be acceptable. But it's a moot point. Are you going to find the remote?
Oh, look, isn't that it over there on the kitchen table?
That's the telephone. Don't you think I would know what a remote looks like?
Well, I don't know. You only had your cataract surgery recently. I guess you're right. It's under the cushion. Anyway.
I wasn't sure where I was going to go after that. That was good.
Nailed the landing.
Right. That was pretty cool. I like that one.
Yeah.
Like I said, that was like talking to my kids.
Yeah.
It's like everything's in a question with them.
Yep.
Like, but Dad, didn't you like blah 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 blah? I was like, yeah, but did you die?
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you?
And yeah, I love improv games. I mean, it is hard to come back to it after you've been out of it for so long, but I think they also make for great like road trip games if you're trying to.
Right, I can see that.
Yeah.
When you were doing it for improv and whatnot, was there a time limit? Like I know, like we're kind of like laughing and just chilling and whatnot, but like, how snappy a response did you have to be?
Forgot something unusual. Okay, we'll get that one. That'll be our last one of the night.
All right.
But yeah, you had to be snappy. The way it worked typically is your cohort would be 3 to 4 people. If you're in a class, you had like a class of like 20, 30 people, and then you had broken up into cohorts. Or if you're just doing like a show, each cohort would handle a game or a section, and then they'd do another. And you had maybe like 5 to 10 minutes to do something.
Okay.
And the idea was the things you established beforehand was you'd have one person start it and one person would end it. Usually, if it's you'd have like the opposing people's like how you started it, I'd ended it. And you do the same thing where you just kind of go back and forth until someone's like, until someone who's checking the clock would say, "Oh, and I solved the issue." The anticlimax became kind of a staple of improv.
Gotcha.
But and you'd have things set up where if someone was taking too long or if they were very clearly lost, you'd almost as being that person. There's kind of the rule was you don't break character, but you the unspoken rules you kind of play into it so you get the audience laughing to know that you're dying at that moment.
You're right.
And then you'd have one of the members of your cohort would be on the wings, and they would come in and ask the next question to tag you out.
Oh, nice.
So if something happened, like, well, what are you doing about this? And if they didn't have an answer, like you sent the person who caught with the wings and like, hey Brian, didn't you leave that thing on fire?
Nice.
Shouldn't you go put that out?
That's cool.
Yeah. and then they'd go back and forth on that, and then you do that until the scene resolved. And so you might have moments where like the original two of the cohort come back on, or if like everyone comes on at the 1 second, so everyone's just messed around doing stuff and just yelling questions at each other across the stage. Yeah, and then there are other ones where we do sometimes we're doing something where we have plants in the audience, where to be other cohorts who would sit in the audience, and then they'd get involved at some point, and then everyone else, and they had to make sure to sit away from the other members of the company or whatever. So when something happens and then they get involved, or if all of a sudden everyone in the audience just turns, and is like, it's that added shock factor. So it's always a little bit of like snap to it, but also you know that you have people that you can rely on to kind of bail out if you need it.
Right. That's cool. I've never done that. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like I've seen like on shows and whenever people talk about taking improv stuff, but like I've never actually experienced that. That was neat.
Yeah, and most community colleges have theater classes that do improv. They're pretty affordable. Even just like they might even just offer community improv classes, which are like usually very cheap. And there's always, if like community theaters will also do generally like classes and stuff too as well, that might even just be free sometimes.
Right.
So
I think now that you mention it, I think my 14-year-old, I think that her, because she's in a performing arts school, and she wanted to take a theater where she was musical theater where she was on stage singing and dancing and stuff like that. But she ended up taking just theater, which was like going through different dialogues with each other.
Yeah.
And I believe that she mentioned that she did improv as well. I didn't think it was something like that. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I got started. It was theater class, and it eventually did lead into musical theater and, doing Anything Goes, where I got to use a bad British accent and tap dance. But it just starts out like very basics, is just learning how to exist on stage and put out energy.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll end the night before we get to ending that proper. We'll hit Phil's suggestion here, trying to figure out something unusual in the fridge.
That's interesting.
So we'll hit this one. I'll do questions only again. I'll start it off, and then you can end it when you feel as appropriate. and usually they end it is by doing yeah. All right. So we're trying to figure out something unusual in the fridge. Hey, Jose, do you know what this is?
What, that thing next to the milk?
Yeah, that thing next to the milk. I don't remember picking it up. Did you get this?
I didn't get that. But why does it have hair?
That's my question. Yeah. So you have no idea how long it's been in there.
I have no clue how long that's been. Did it just wink at me?
Well, I don't know, but I don't know. Does it look like it's vibrating? Maybe.
If I give you $5, will you lick it?
I'll do a lot of things for $5, but no. Do you think that will get me like sick?
I'm fairly certain that that will put you in the hospital or kill you. But do you have insurance?
Yes, my work has insurance, but does this seem like anything to be covered by any copay?
I don't think that's from this planet. Don't you think that looks disgusting?
It looks like something I saw on Sci-Fi Channel once. Well, do you think we can throw that in the trash, or is that like does it need to go into like biological containment?
That should not go into the trash. Something will eat it. Do you have a radiation suit?
Well, I have plenty of COVID masks still, but I don't think that's going to cut it. Do you think? Uh, is it moving?
That's not right. That's not right at all. I think you should put it back and close the fridge. Yeah, I think. Don't you think that would kill us all?
It kind of looks like that thing that the neighbor showed us on their door cam. Do you think it broke in?
I mean, if it did, how did it open the fridge?
I mean, well, don't things like raccoons or possums, don't they have like working thumbs?
I don't think I've seen a raccoon or possum around here in quite some time. Do you think this thing may have eaten them?
I don't want to think about what kind of implications this might be having for our local ecosystem. Do you think you can find me some of the gloves under the sink?
I could, but do you want to wear the green ones or the pink ones?
I'll take whatever I can get. Do you think this thing cares what color is grabbing it?
I mean, you would care what your casket looked like, right?
Would I if I'm dead?
That's a fair point. I think we need. Do you think we need to set it on fire?
Like that movie, The Thing?
Yeah, I mean, it worked on that, right?
True, but I don't have a flamethrower. Would our homeowner's insurance cover setting our kitchen on fire?
I mean, does that count as act of God?
Does this look like anything God would send?
Probably not. And how do I end again?
You just say and then figure out some way to solve the issue.
Okay. And I think the garbage disposal is the best option.
That's a good idea.
Oh, wait, that was just hummus.
Huh.
That was a little tricky. We
Yeah.
kept it within like one little area. That was neat.
Good. That was good.
Thanks,
like
Phil.
that. Yeah, good suggestion, Phil. Thanks for checking our show. So we have been The Silverline Show on Tuesday. We have our banner there. You can follow us on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, where I mostly post Halo and Destiny memes, as well as do some fun comics things with a few other people on there. You can check out our website, silverlinecomics.com, for I recent craft post where I interviewed Jose actually, and I got some questions and answers about how he inks and his work ethic at the drawing desk.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, as really good answers. So we will be back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific. You can check out Wednesday Wham tomorrow at 8 Eastern and Silver Sunday on Sundays 8 Eastern. We will next week. We do actually have a hard subject because we are entering into. I don't know if I shared this with you guys yet, but the podcasts are taking a bit of a change. We are going into a hard scheduling section, so it's less pressure on me because I get these solved like weeks ahead of time. Where were we? Okay. But next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about comics as a hybrid medium. So how do you do exposition in a both visual and written format as opposed to, just expositing like a movie would all visually or expositing like a book would all written? So how does it work when you have to do both? So we will be back on Tuesday talking about that. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your week. And until that time, remember to make mine Silverline.